it will slow you down. It will make that slower speed feel harder. What's up, everybody? Coach Zach from Inspire Fitness, Athletic and Endurance Coaching. That's right. The FAE in Inspire FAE does stand for something. So if that's all you learned today, you've learned at least something. But I'm here now to talk to you a little bit about training in the heat. It's that time of year. And any day now, in a few days, in a few weeks, you're going to go outside and be hit with a wall of heat. So let's talk about training in the heat, preparing to race in the heat, and understand how we can do that best. So the first thing to understand about the heat is it is a stressor. It is just like, or it's similar in many ways to adding in hills to a run, or making it big gear work on the bike, or wearing a ruck vest, for example. So it's not the same, but it is similar. It is a stressor. So it is going to require more recovery time, and it is going to make everything harder. It will slow you down. It will make that slower speed feel harder. That affects everybody. How much it affects them is determined a lot by fitness, preparation, and genetics. So it's going to affect some people more than others, but it is going to affect everybody. So what can we do about it? Before we jump forward, let's understand the physiology of how heat impacts our bodies and our performance. Right now, as you sit here, your heart is pumping blood. It's beating so many times per minute, right? We start training, we start exercising, we start running, we start swimming, cycling, whatever it is, our heart rate goes up because our muscles need oxygen, need the blood, they need the fuel. So our heart rate starts increasing to deliver that blood to our muscles. That's a normal, typical response, right? We all see that. We start running and our heart rate goes up. Maybe it goes up from 60 to 100 to 120, whatever it does. Now, when we add in the heat, our body says, wow, we're making a lot of heat. We need to cool ourselves. We need to keep ourselves at a cooler temperature. So what it does is it starts to send more of that blood near the surface, out to your skin, so that when the wind hits it, when the air hits it, it can wick away and whip away some of that heat. That means there's less blood going directly to the muscles. So your muscles still need all of this blood. It needs all the oxygen and the nutrients that the blood and carry away the waste that the blood was doing before, but there's less going directly to your muscles. So what does your heart have to do? It needs to beat faster just to do the same job you were doing before. The same exact thing in the heat is going to require a higher heartbeat, right? So your heart's going to be beating faster just from the get-go. So that's one reason it's going to feel a little bit harder. It's one reason you may notice that your heart rate goes up. Caveat here is everybody reacts a little differently. I have seen athletes whose heart rate won't go up in the heat. It will stay suppressed. It will stay low. So you may be somewhere on that spectrum, but in general, we'll see an increase in heart rate. The second thing that happens is as you start exercising and training, you're going to start sweating. And as you sweat more, you're losing more water, you're dehydrating. You're also losing some sodium and other electrolytes. So as that happens, your blood starts to thicken. So before, your heart would fill with each pump, right? So your heart's sort of like a balloon. It would fill up with blood and then it would squeeze it all out. It would fill up with blood and then it would squeeze it all out. And every stroke would send out enough blood to circulate through the body. But as you dehydrate, your blood's going to thicken. So now when your heart expands and it opens up, maybe it's only filling 75%. Before it was 100%, now it's only filling 75%. So what does your heart have to do? Well, it still needs 100% of the blood to go through your body, right? It can't only just pump 75% through. So your heart needs to increase again how fast it's beating. So we will see again bigger, higher heart rate, especially as we get hotter. And it's a twofold thing, actually. When you start to dehydrate, your body cools less efficiently, right? So now you're getting hotter, your heart rate's already going up, and now it's going to continue to go up to a certain point, right? So everything becomes harder. So how can we mitigate that both on race day, and how can we train around that? So it's really important that we do stay hydrated throughout. So I think the number one, the first thing to do is avoid training in the hottest parts of the day, if that is at all possible. Avoid the time between 11 o'clock a.m. and 4 p.m. if you can. Those are usually going to be the hottest parts of the day. That's easier said than done for a lot of us. We may be doing bricks. You may be getting off of the bike and having to go for a run, and it doesn't matter, if you started at 5 a.m., you have a 6-hour bike ride, you're getting off, it's 11 a.m., it's time to go run. It is the hottest part of the day. So it's not always possible to go in the cooler parts of the day, but when you can, try to train in the cooler parts of the day. It will allow you to have a better session. It won't be as hard. Recovery won't be as hard. If you have to train in the middle of the day, there's no way around it. Understand, you are going to slow down. It is going to feel harder. And because it is an added stressor, you're going to need more recovery than you normally would. So if normally, you feel pretty good after one of these workouts in the heat, you may not feel as good as you had in the past. So that's the first tip. But the second tip is you are going to need hydration. Hydration, and I'm going to just mention it as fluids, but you should be including some sort of electrolytes here. There's all kinds of assessments you can do, test to see how much electrolytes. I'm just going to say sodium for now, but there's others in there: potassium, manganese, calcium, an abundance of electrolytes, and most supplements nowadays that you take will have them in the appropriate amounts. But there are tests. Gatorade makes a test for about $30, I think. There are patches you wear. It will tell you how much salt is in your sweat and how much you sweat. In my experience, these tests really usually only confirm what you already know, which is, are you a heavy sweater or are you a light sweater? Do you have a lot of salt in your sweat, or is it very little? And it's pretty easy. If you get done a run and you look at yourself and you're soaking wet and there's salt lines everywhere, guess what? You're probably a heavy, salty sweater, and vice versa. But they are effective, so you should be hydrating on every run. That means carrying water with you, or even something as short as 15 minutes. Carry water with you. You might not need it, right? Hey, maybe you go out there and you don't need it, but maybe you go out there and you're like, wow, I'm super thirsty today. I need to drink this. The second thing that it does is you're drinking not just for today's workout, you're drinking for tomorrow's workout, right? The better hydrated you stay today, the better you're going to recover today, so the better you're going to be able to perform tomorrow. All right. The other thing is, I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it, because that can be a big So even for 15 minutes, I tell all my athletes, just take it with you. So it could be a handheld bottle, it could be a vest. Now, as you go longer, you're going to need more fluids, obviously. And again, you can test these various ways. We're not going to get into that right now, but you can test how much fluids you should be drinking. If you do a hydration vest, bonus points, you can fill that up with ice, and that's going to be like an active cooling mechanism, at least for the first maybe 15 to 30 minutes of your run, depending on how hot it is. You can freeze water bottles as well, so if you're having a water for the second half of the run, it could be frozen, and by the time you get to it, it's going to be melted. But always carry water with you. All right, so that's the first one. Second part, adjust your intensity. Going to seem harder. You're not going to be able to run as fast as you normally run, right? The power you put out on the bike may not be as sustainable for as long amount of time as it normally is. We talked about it, right? What's going on with your body, the physiology, the heat response. Your body is trying to cool itself and do all the same amount of work as normal. It's going to be way harder, at least in the very beginning, right? So give yourself some time, adjust the intensity, except that today, my best isn't going to be as fast as if it was 50 degrees and 0% humidity, right? 20% humidity, right? Because it's 88 degrees and 90% humidity. It's going to be a lot harder. The good news is, if you're racing on a race day, it's going to be a lot harder for everybody else as well. But for training purposes, just accept you're going to be slower, and that's okay. Your body really doesn't know speed, it knows effort, right? So it knows that you're working at whatever effort you're supposed to be working at. It will be a little bit slower. It will probably feel a little bit to a lot bit harder for that easier, quote unquote, easier, so slower effort. So back off the intensity. If you normally do track work and this is your first day in the heat, understand that's probably not the best day to do your first track session. Maybe you just need to continue to run easy and let your body acclimate. And we'll talk more about acclimating in a minute. The third thing, I recommend this to all my athletes. And anytime you start going really long, and it's also helpful, well, it's really helpful when you're going really long, and especially when it's really hot. And that's set up a lap system or a loop system. So maybe you're going to run around your block, so you're passing your house every 15 minutes, or it's a park and you're doing a loop, and it's a 1 or a 2 mile loop for the run. There's a section of road I like to ride. It's about 11 miles one way, so 22 miles round trip. So I'm back and forth about every hour, right? And what you can do is set yourself up your own aid station. You're going to have a cooler. You're going to load it up with all the fluids you need. Add ice. Bring your calories. This is really good for long bike rides. Like if you're training for an Ironman, even if it's not hot, you can set up all your stuff at the cooler, and you can always refill every 30 minutes to an hour, depending on how far away or how big your loop is. On the run, you can make sure you're always getting by, grabbing more ice. You're putting ice down your shirt, ice in your hat, wherever it might be. You're just getting cold fluids, and you're never far from both a cooling station and aid, right? So again, if it's really helpful, even when it's not hot, if it's the middle of winter or the fall, spring, and you just need to be able to make sure you're constantly getting enough calories and fluids, it can be hard to carry all that with you during training. But you can get outside and you can set up your loops, and you can make sure you never run out of hydration or calories. That is a big deal when it is really hot. We talked about it. You're going to be losing more fluids anyway, and you're going to start overheating. And if you dehydrate, your chances of overheating increase. It's way harder for your body to cool itself. So stay on top of it. Make sure you get the sodium in there, like we mentioned, get the electrolytes in there, and stay on top of your hydration and fueling. Use the lapped or the looped course to do that. To that end, you're going to have to adjust or experiment with your fueling and hydration needs and plans. What you consume on a cooler day may or may not be sustainable on a hot day. We talked about the fact that the blood is going all over your body to the skin to dissipate heat. That means not only is there less blood going to your muscles, there's less, I shouldn't say less, but it's a harder time for blood going down your muscles. It's a harder time for your gut to get all the blood it needs to digest and absorb everything that you're eating and drinking. So test it out, right? Make sure you're consuming enough fluids and enough calories, enough carbohydrates usually to fuel you, but understand that you may start to experience some GI distress or some bloating, and that's pretty normal until you experiment and you dial it in and or train yourself on train your gut and your body to digest these things. So that takes time. Going back, give yourself time to acclimate to the heat. If it's your first day out on a really hot day, understand you probably need to cut it shorter, and you probably need to back up on the intensity. So big couple things are: try to avoid the hottest part of the day. Hydrate. Always bring that with you. Have a lap or a loop course so you're always passing by. Check your fueling and hydration plan. Make sure it's working for you in these temperatures. This is really important, by the way. If your A race is going to be in hot weather, you really need to dial this in on hot days so that you know this works for you, because it will be it could be a little bit different. For most people it will, and then you can build up to what you do on cooler days on a hot day sometimes, but it takes practice. The last thing to consider, and I'm not going to cover it in detail here, but if you are interested in learning more about it, please comment below, let me know, and I can do a vlog on this one, would be heat acclimation protocol. This, again, I don't want to go into too much detail. There's a few ways to do it, but this generally requires 10 to 14 days of heat exposure to the heat. And long story short is it will prepare you for training in the heat. You get most of those adaptations, increased blood plasma volume. You will lower the temperature at which you start to sweat, and you will decrease the amount of electrolytes in your sweat. So it's a great thing to do. It can be challenging to manage because it is a big stress, the heat, that is, and adding in more stress to an already stressful training schedule can make a huge toll on you or the athlete. So it's something, if you don't have a coach, I would proceed very cautiously. If you do have a coach, I would proceed very cautiously. Most people probably don't need the heat training protocol. Most people are going to do best just by continuing to train as normal and being as fit as possible. One of the keys to racing well and performing well in the heat is to be as fit as you can. That means hitting all your workouts. So if you have an extra 15 to 30 minutes that you were thinking, oh, I could go use this heat acclimation protocol, it might be best to make sure you're getting all your workouts in. Maybe you need another swim, maybe you need another run, maybe you can add 10 minutes on to your bike, whatever it might be. But I don't think heat acclimation is right for everybody. So don't necessarily think, oh, I'm gonna go get it. It is a marginal gain. You know, it is not the biggest thing that's going to help you have a successful race. You want to be ready for the heat, but if you're not as fit as possible, then it doesn't matter if you're heat acclimated, because you're not going to do as well as you could have anyway. So first, get as fit as possible. And then if you are interested in learning more about that, let me know, and I can definitely do a post on that. But I'm hesitant to give anybody specific advice on that because, like I said, it is a very, it's a stressful situation, it's precarious, and you need to really monitor and weigh the pros and cons. So those are the tips for training and getting ready for the heat. I hope you found them helpful. What tips or advice do you have? And please, if you like this content, if you want to see more like that, please hit the like and subscribe button. If you share this, I'd be forever grateful too. By hitting the like button and subscribe, it helps grow this community. It will help more people see it. My goal is for this to help as many people as possible. So I hope I'll see you here next time. And until next time, be inspired, be inspirational. I'm out.